going to be very blunt, and I will be, so if I have to embarrass you, I will, because our speakers are truly first class. And I want you to please, without much further ado, put a round of applause for them, and I will quickly call up on the next speaker to come up. And the keynote speech that will be given this evening is by a good friend of mine, Tom Ilube, who currently, I'm told, and he knows himself, he plays it down, 2017, the most influential black person in the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Some of you will have heard me say this before, but I should just repeat it. It is true that actually, almost a year ago now, this time last year, a publication decided to tell me that I was the most influential black person in the UK. So I went home and I told my wife, I said, you know, I'm the most influential black person in the UK. She said, you? You're not even the most influential black person in this house. So you know, I know how to manage my expectations when it comes to that. Some of you come from Lagos and you grew up there. You are the sophisticated ones. I didn't go to Lagos. I just passed through and went straight to Benin. In fact, I'm not from Benin. I'm from Afuze, which is near Benin. Even Benin people fear Afuze because we have some remarkable abilities. Some people say that, you know, if you want to fly but you don't really want to use a plane, visit the guys in Afuze, they can sort you out. This isn't true. We don't do that. We can do time travel, though. Yeah, we're very good at that. So I went to see the guys, and I said, I'm giving this talk about what will happen in 40 years' time. And they say, oh, yeah, come, we'll show you. So we went. We went to look. Now, one of the interesting things is that they pointed out that the path you go down depends on choices you make. And in fact, some of the choices that we make now in this time, this year and over the next few years, will define the path that our country will go on over the next 40 years and what it will look like. And we can go down an optimistic path, we can go down a pessimistic path. I chose to go down the optimistic path. I chose to go down the path to show me what the future could be, because I wanted to see what it would look like if we made the right decisions now and invested in the right way. One of the things that's interesting is what's going to happen to our population. So we're 180 million people in Nigeria today. 2050, it's estimated that there will be somewhere around the 350 to 400 million people in Nigeria. That is an astonishing number of people. Nigeria at that point will be the third biggest country in the world. That is just astonishing. And what's more astonishing is that 60% of that population will be under the age of 25. 200 to 250 million young people will live in Nigeria in 40 years' time. You know, if you think about that and think about the implications of that and the opportunities that that brings, it is just truly astonishing to think about. Lagos alone, by 2050, will be a capital of maybe 35 to 40 million people. Lagos as one city will have 35 to 40 million people in it. And if you think about the people that surround it as well, you're probably in the region of maybe 50 million people will live in Lagos and the surrounding areas. That's bigger than many, many countries today will be in just that one city. Astonishing. We also have to think about what's going to happen to our main resource, oil, and what's happening into the world around us. So you look at countries like the UK, France, Netherlands, all announcing that by 2040, they will have banned fossil fuel burning cars. They won't have them anymore. It'll all be electric cars. And one of the main oil producers in the world, very, very smart oil producer, Norway, that's managed to build up $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund from its oil, has said that by 2025, it will have eliminated fossil fuel cars. It will be all electric cars. An oil-producing company has made that decision that it says, we know that oil has built us to what we are today, but now we're going to use our money, wealth, resource to shift our economy radically, and we're going to become a leader in this new field. It's estimated that by the time China, India, the US, Germany all move to electric cars and the whole world over the next 20, 30 years shifts in that direction, the demand for oil will drop by something like 21 billion barrels per day. It will drop by that much. Total demand at the moment of the order of 96 billion barrels a day. 21 billion barrels a day demand could drop off as a result of that. What are the implications of that for a country that relies on oil, whose population is going to double to 400 million people in that sort of time frame? We have to think about that, and we have to start planning for it. So we have a choice. Do we go down a path that is challenging and full of threats, and that's the way we look at it? Or do we go down a path of opportunities, and we say what we're seeing here, huge opportunities? I think we go down a path of opportunities, and we've seen the effect that it can have if you take that path. Let's look at one of our industries. Nollywood didn't exist 20 years ago. 1992, I think, was the first film that gets called a Nollywood film. Now is the second biggest film production industry in the world. Hollywood, then Nollywood. That's how it goes. This is an industry that did not exist, and now it is the second biggest in the world. So what does that tell us? It is a really, really important lesson. It tells us that from a standing start, we as a country can create an industry that is a world beater, a world leader, inside of 20 years, if we go about it in the right way. We know we can do it. Anyone who says, well, we can't do it, Nigerians can't do it, it'll never happen, just point them there and say, we've done it before. If we've done it before, we can do it again. So it's not a question of not being able to do it, it's a question of what choices we make and where we decide to put our effort. We know that we can leverage exponential growth in order to achieve this. But where do we focus? What I say and I believe is that we focus on technology. We embrace technology. That is what we need to do. If we've done it in films, we can do it in technology. So let me paint a vision. What we know is that the country, if it carries on its current path, just because of its size, it is going to grow to be the 14th biggest country by GDP by 2050. That is just the path that we're on at the moment. What I'm interested in is if we manage to shift out of that path and get some exponential growth, what's the opportunity? How do we become a top 5 economy in the next 20 years, in the next 40 years? The way we do that is by leveraging exponential growth driven by technology and the technology revolution, and coupled with the massive population that we have. In order to do that, we have to focus on particular bits of technology. And in the same way as we have with Nollywood, we have to say, this bit, this bit, this bit, this bit, we are going to be absolute world leaders in that area. Not good enough, not fairly average, and some of our guys are nearly as good as they could be if they were in London or Silicon Valley or whatever, but genuine, absolute world leaders in certain areas, not in everything. We don't need to spread ourselves too thin. We need to pick areas and say, that area, Nigeria is going to dominate in that area and that area. What are the areas that I'm interested in? Where would I focus? Data and data science, absolutely crucial. We should be absorbing data from wherever we can get it and couple that with massive computing power. There shouldn't be any opinions. I think this, I think that. The question we should ask every time somebody says, I think this, I believe that, we should ask, show me the data. We should be hungry about data. There are no valid views unless we've absorbed the data, analyzed the data. We should allow ourselves to look at the data and make sharp decisions, make critical decisions. My opinion was this. Now I've looked in detail at the data. My opinion has shifted to that. That should be something that we are entirely comfortable with. Every country around the world, every developed country is looking for data scientists everywhere. anyone who can understand data, understand the analysis in order to make decisions. We need to become world experts at that. Somebody said to me recently, data is the new oil. If you get data and you understand data, data is the new oil. Why are people like Google, Facebook, etc. so dominant? The reason why they're so dominant is the data that they have. You know, Google has a quantity of data and analysis of all our behaviors that you just wouldn't believe. It is big data that defines value in the world that we're in now. And we need to get really, really good at that. And guess what? With 400 million people in our country in 2050, we have the people, we have the resources in order to absorb massive amounts of data and analyze it and draw inferences from that. And remember that Nigeria, with its 400 million people at that stage, is sitting at the heart of a continent that at that point will have 2.5 billion people on the continent. So we are an astonishingly large country within an astonishingly large continent. We need to get passionate and hungry about absorbing data. Revolution in energy. 40% of the energy from the sun hits Africa, just physically, because where we are in the middle, around the equator. 40% of the sun's energy hits Africa. There isn't really an energy problem in the world. Do you know, people have calculated that if you were to cover 1.2% of the Sahara Desert in solar panels, you would generate enough energy to provide the energy needs for the whole world. That's how much sunlight hits Africa, 1.2%. Some countries are understanding that. So Morocco is building vast solar arrays, 1.4 million square meters of solar array. Morocco is investing in and building in as we speak. By 2020, Morocco will get 38% of its energy from solar and renewable sources. Imagine where it'll be by 2040. You know, we don't really have to worry about energy in our country with all the sunlight that we get. We could solve those problems if we set our minds on it and said, actually, you know what? We have decided we're going to deal with all these problems of electricity and so forth. They would just get dealt with. We have all the energy we need. We are just not harnessing it. The third thing that I'm really interested in is satellites and drones. And the way that you can put a digital net over your country and listen and learn, you know, agriculture, natural disasters, elections, water, internet, mining, you know, with smart satellites. And satellites are so cheap these days. You know, we talk about getting Ghana put up a satellite this year. 4 students at a university in Ghana put up a satellite this year. We should have 100 satellites, you know, up there working for us, seeing what's going on, generating data. We should become one of the world leaders in satellite technology. And finally, artificial intelligence. We absolutely have to become masters of artificial intelligence. You know, Nigeria has no option than to plunge itself into what that generation of technology is doing. Because what we don't understand is that the game that's being played now is happening in algorithms, behind the scenes. You don't see, you know, you're fighting for, you know, our big boys here and there are saying, hey, we bought a plane, hey, we've got this much oil, this, that, and the other. The game is being played behind the scenes with algorithms. Let me give you a very simple example. Next time you go onto Google on your browser, type in the words beautiful baby. Just type those words in and then look at the images that come up. What you will see when you look at the images that come up is you will see that almost every image, until you get down to about 100 images, is a white child. The reason for that is whoever wrote that algorithm decided that that's what was meant by beautiful baby. And I don't blame them for that, because you weren't in the room writing the algorithm. You know, you were busy buying the next car, plane, etc., etc. But what's happening with the future is it's being encoded in the algorithms that drive these countries. If we are not in the room developing those algorithms, we shouldn't grumble when the world is defined in ways that we didn't want it to be defined. We have to engage with that part of the world, and we have to celebrate that part of the world. You know, if somebody says, with all due respect to the eminent lawyers that are here, my son or daughter is going to go and be a lawyer, you should be saying, a lawyer, why not a computer programmer? Why not, you know, developing the algorithms, even if they're going into law? A professor at Berkeley University in California said to me, you know, if you've got a child that's going into law, I have 2 words for them: computer law. You know, there are a number of people who understand both computing and technology and law. Understand it at a deep level is incredibly limited. So those are the areas that I would see us going into. How do we get there? How do we build this future? The key for me is education, and STEM education, science and technology education, is absolutely key. That is where we need to invest heavily now in order to prepare a generation for that future. So in conclusion, my approach is to take action more than words. I like to think of an idea, and then I like to act on that idea and back that idea. And I believe that the task ahead of us now is to look for those genius young people, give them the science and technology education and ambition, and then unleash them on the country and on the continent in order to have the impact. So my first steps were to set up the school that I mentioned, the African Science Academy, for girls in particular, that we look for across the continent and bring together and give them an education the likes of which they wouldn't get anywhere else in the world. I don't compromise. You know, a lot of people compromise and they say, oh, well, if you're building a school in Ghana or Nigeria or wherever it is, it doesn't need to be of the same standard that it would be as if you were building it in the UK or US. I don't say that. I say it needs to be as good or better. The speakers that come need to be as good or better. My expectation of the students is as high or higher than it would be here. And my girls work to that same level. They do A-levels. They do A-levels in maths, physics, chemistry, but they do in maths, further maths and physics. Maths, further maths, physics, A-levels. But they do A-levels in 12 months instead of 2 years because they're African girls and I expect them to be smarter and more able than any other girls anywhere in the world. And I tell you what, they actually achieved that as well. So the group of girls that just passed through our school,
Here's an interesting one for you. This is by a young Afro-American artist, sadly deceased, called Jean-Michel Basquiat. Any estimates on what this sold for this year?
7 million.
Someone's got it. $110 million. Now you're all thinking about artists for your children. And as Tom rightly said, in a population that is going to end up being nearly 400 million, he's absolutely right. There are going to be a lot of Einsteins, but there are going to be a lot of Picassos as well. And there is a huge opportunity right now to grab that chance. In a very, very brief few moments, what I really wanted to say is to echo one, Carmen's comments about how much of Africans' wealth, both physically and culturally, is extraordinarily undervalued, but also to say to everybody, this is your buying opportunity. This is your time to get out there and support Africa.
Just the icing on the cake.
Art, culture, we heard a bit about movies, about Nollywood, the media are in their own right incredibly important drivers for society itself and the fabric of society, but also they are businesses and they generate large amounts of money, and I hope in a small way to encourage that.
What I really